Hello, my name is Geogen and welcome back to World of Tanks. Back on the 9.10 test server, back looking at the Japanese heavy branch. But today, instead of an overview like my previous video, go have a look at that if you want to. There'll be a link on the screen or in the description, or both perhaps. And there you are, go have fun with that video. Anyhow, back to today's video, and that will be on the Oni, which is a tier 7 Japanese heavy tank. And of course, things are subject to change. Things may remain the same, things may change, but anyway, we're going to have a look at the stats and some gameplay as it is currently today as I'm doing this recording. So, we'll do a brief overview of the stats. I would normally bring up Tank Inspector, but like I said in the other video, Tank Inspector isn't currently working for me with this client. Anyhow, we have 1550 hit points, which at tier 7 is pretty good. It's more than the Tiger. It has 50 more hit points than the Tiger, I believe. It's more than the AMX 45 M445, which is the French tier 7 heavy, which has 1200, I believe. The IS has 1230. Chinese IS has 1280, something like that. It has more hit points than all of them. It's only 50 less than that of a tier 8 Tiger 2. So the amount of hit points you get is pretty good indeed. The weight is 103 tons, and wow, 103 tons at tier 7. It's quite substantial and can potentially be used in certain situations. Just as a comparison, the vehicle weighs less than its tier 6 predecessor, which weighs 152 tons, which is quite ridiculous, with the equipment set up, of course. The top speed and the engine power of the Oni is 1200 engine power, horsepower, which is a very nice engine. It's a tier 8 engine apparently. 2 times Kawasaki Type 98 V12s, blah 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 blah. 1200 engine horsepower, 20% chance of impact. These engines are used on a lot of these vehicles, so it's probably best to unlock them. However, you only get a 25 km top speed, and that's due to the weight of 103 tons. The bizarre thing is, you have the same engine down at tier 6, and this has a higher top speed of by only 4.4 kilometers mind, but it's still a higher top speed. Regardless, the traverse speed is very slow. It's very big. You haven't actually seen it from the side. There you go. It's a huge vehicle, much taller than a Tiger tank, much bigger than a Tiger tank, and you may be able to use that to your advantage, but at the same time it's a huge disadvantage if you're encountering artillery and you don't have any camo rating, if you thought you may have because of your size. There's no way you're hiding from people. Anyway, 18 degrees a second traverse speed is not brilliant, but you can manage with it, and if you have a good crew and crew skills, you'll be able to make that slightly faster. Now, moving on to the armour. The armour is surprising. At the front, the turret is 200mm thick, which is nice, very nice indeed. However, it's pretty flat. There's only a slight slope to it. The front cheeks are angled, but they may well not be 200mm thick. The bit which I suspect is 200mm is the front section here around the gun, including the gun mount loop. And then the sides may be slightly thinner, but we'll have to see in a external program when I can. The sides of the turret are 150mm, as well as the rear, which is quite nice, so there is the potential for angling and bouncing of shots. The turret armour will have its weaknesses at tier 9 and tier 8 though, especially from the sides. Anyhow, the hull armour is 175mm thick at the front. Now, the front plate I would suspect is 175mm from this welding here and perhaps this welding, but I suspect it's this welding. And the angle is okay, but it isn't as good as on the tier 60 IO. You can see that angle is nicer, although that's 150mm thick. So you do have 25mm of more armour. I suspect the lower plate here is thinner, but then again it might be as thick. It's also sloped poorly, only a very slight sloping. The upper beveled bit up here, the second double glacis I would say, will probably be thinner, and I don't know about these two mini turrets. They might have the same armor thickness and that would be pretty good, but again I highly doubt that. Now, the side armor is only 17mm thick, and this is quite the issue with the majority of these vehicles. They're very tall, they're very flat, and they have very thin side armor. So if you see one trundling along with its side to you like this, and if they remain at the same value, which is likely, then just shoot it in the side of the hull. You'll go straight through, maybe hit the engine at the back, set it on fire, huge explosion. There we go. Or the ammo rack even. Anyhow, the rear armor is thicker than the side armor, and this is another trait that you have seen on other vehicles other than these Japanese heavies. One notable example is the BDR, I believe, which has 60, 40 and 60 again. So there are some vehicles with this arrangement. So 150mm of armor, if you can angle it, may well save your bacon. That's a brief run through of the armor. The guns. There are several to choose from, several being free. So the stock gun is used on the tier 60 OI. It has better rate of fire and soft stats, but the penetration and damage is the same. 300 average damage and 175 penetration. Very similar to that of the Soviet gun. So at tier 7 that'll do okay, and 201 with its AP, you don't get APCR with a lot of Japanese vehicles, is okay as well. It isn't a huge increase, it's 25-26mm increase, so use that in some situations, maybe against tier 8s and 9s. However, you'll want to quickly upgrade to one of two other guns as well, and those are these two on the right. You have a howitzer, 15cm, which is basically a KV-2's weapon, or another 10cm gun, or a 105. It's listed as a 10cm gun, and this gun is quite good, but again the penetration is lacking. It's kind of similar to American penetration, some of its 90mm, I believe. Or actually, wait, the T-29 has 198 penetration with its 105 gun, so it's similar. And the APCR, or armor piercing in this case, the premium armor piercing, is only 215 penetration, so that's okay. Aim time is so very long, of 3.3 seconds, and the dispersion is quite bad. The rate of fire is 5 rounds a minute, so around a 10-second reload. 12-second reload, in fact, at stock. But with crew skills, vents, gun rammer, you can get that down. It's much like a Centurion 7.1's rate of fire if you have one of those vehicles. Now, the other gun is a howitzer, like I say, 150mm in caliber, 2.61 rounds a minute, which is bad rate of fire. Poor penetration at this tier, 121 with armor piercing, 150 with heat. That's an interesting thing. This vehicle gets heat with this howitzer, and 75 penetration with its high explosive. And pretty much use high explosive with this. You've got horrible dispersion and horrible aim time, so you do have to wait a long time, but you may well strike a target and get a nice amount of damage done. Those are the two top guns that you may want to use on this machine. The 10cm looks like this, and the 15cm looks like this. So a shorter gun versus a longer gun, I suppose. And then the last two stats are the 380 meters view range, which is okay. Tier 7 vehicles generally have a similar view range, I believe, and 550 meters signal range, which is kind of poor, but no one really cares about signal range. View range is more important, of course. So, as for equipment, pretty standard. I would go for a large caliber gun rammer, the ventilation, and because of its size, and because its sidearm is pretty bad, you could go for a spool liner, as I've done, or perhaps a toolbox to improve the rate of you getting your tracks back on if they get blown off. You can see how much of an issue it's going to be if you get your tracks blown off in this vehicle, because artillery will love to shoot at you, as it has done in certain games for me. And that is a thing you're going to have to deal with if you want to play these Japanese heavies. So, let's have a look at a couple of replays that I had of this Oni, one with the 15cm howitzer and one with a top 10cm gun. So, you join me on the map. Highway in the Oni with the 15cm howitzer. And you can see we're travelling on flat ground and around 25 km an hour, as the stats would suggest. So you're going to have to deal with the quite lacking mobility in terms of top speed. The turret traverse you can see is okay considering the size and bulkiness of the machine, and there is the very long aim time of the howitzer, which you should be used to from weapons like KP2's howitzer. So you take a shot at the T-54 Mod 1 by miss, so that's one thing we're going to have to put up with, is poor accuracy and long shell time in the air, so low velocity of the shell. However, when you get close and personal with the enemy, like this T-143, you can do very nice things with the HE. We took a bounce from an unknown enemy, but it was off the turret, which is unsurprising, it bounced. So we did a nice amount of damage to T-143. Moving forward, looking for more targets. Tiger 2 drives, shoots at us, bounces off our nicely angled upper plate, and we hit the T-54 from earlier in the side for a nice amount of damage. It's not penetrating here, but it takes his track off. You can see he only has just repaired it. Then Tiger pops out again, we're still reloading, and he pops back into cover before we can do anything. We get hit in the side there, but we're behind cover-ish, so I'm not too worried about it. Another nice hit into a opposing Japanese heavy tank. I believe that's the Tier 8. Oh ho. And he's been tracked. And he's dead. Didn't even have to penetrate his sidearm. We did enough splash damage. You can see the reload is pretty long, however, it's 19 seconds. But again, it's like KB2. And if you have a really nice crew, then it doesn't matter. Looking for a shot, just plant it in the turret. Try and go for some critical damage. Don't get it, but we do a nice amount of splash. I was trying to ram this guy, but he weighs the same as me, and we are going far too slowly to do that. So ramming is a very rare tactic you can do. Oni again. Very poor shot, but we still managed to splash him with HE. Or possibly penetrate. But now we're reloading and there's a Borsig. We could have easily had him. Appears he's firing HE as well. Or, alternatively, he's firing some kind of heat. I doubt that actually penetrated. But he's using the 150mm gun. The short howitzer type gun that the Borsig can get. Kill the lurver, don't even have to penetrate him with this howitzer. That's very nice about these howitzer games. Is you can just roll up to an enemy, plant him in the side, in the front, in the rear. If you have a big enough caliber, I mean low caliber HE does nothing pretty much, but High caliber HE such as 150mm guns, like this one and the Oni, can do just fine. But now we have to head back to base, and this is a problem of a lot of these higher tier Japanese heavies, is they're very slow. Very slow indeed. So let's cut up to where we get back to the base. Okay, so we're almost at the base now, and there's this 50T and a E25 who is penetrating us through the side armor, I imagine, because we're angled poorly. With the power tracks, we go forward, and we try and get HE damage into the FCM, but it's over for us. I believe that E25 must have used the APCR that he can get to go through the side of our tank, or potentially he just shot straight through the side. So I made a miscalculation there. I thought I may have been able to kill the 50T and absorb the E25's fire. Let's move on to the 10cm game. So we're on Prokhorovka for the game with the 10cm gun. And as you can see, the mobility is the same. The gun makes no difference. We spotted a T-71. 3.3 second aim time, I believe it was, but we still managed to get the shot because the T-71 just sits there and allows us to shoot at him. I mean, he didn't know that we were there, but still, he backs off, and we reload within 10.13 seconds. So very similar indeed to a Centurion 7.1. Now, Prokhorovka isn't my favourite map for any vehicle really, because it either A, turns into a huge campfest, or B, you just get spammed by artillery. So I thought there was a Centurion 1 on this side, but it turns out he's on the other side of the train tracks, so we can continue up the hill, looking for targets through the buildings. Specifically this IS-3. Now remember, we've got 190 penetration with these standard armor piercing. So let's see what we can do. There's a shot on the IS-3 available. Park. And wait for him to come through and fire. I was lucky we hit him, to be honest, because of the long aim time, and we track him, allowing our allies to do some damage. However, we're on top of the hill now, and soon enemies will make themselves apparent. A Rheinmetall Borsig is there. Behind cover, he goes blind. We might be able to hit him, we don't actually know. Now the Centurion's behind cover as well, so we now start getting hit by T-69 heat ammunition, as you can see that nice sizzle. Doesn't matter if you've got 175 armor, if the enemy is firing 200 plus heat ammunition at you, and you have no spaced armor. But we do bounce a few shots from whatever else is up there on the hill as well. Now an IS-6, we've still got 190 pen loaded, and it bounces straight off the side of an IS-6. And he's not even very well angled, it's just the fact that the IS-6's side armor is well angled to begin with. So we load a gold round with 215 penetration and repair our ammo rack. That one goes in quite nice. So I'm thinking at this point, yes, the gold rounds are reliably good enough to penetrate the side of tier 8s. That, however, is my answer to that question. And no, 215 penetration is not sufficient at these ranges. It seems every other shot goes in, so of 2 shots fired, 1 will go in. As is confirmed by that bounce. Now the accuracy, we are firing at 360 meters, so maybe it is bouncing up into the more armoured turret, but even so, 215 is not effective. But this game, surprisingly, didn't turn into a huge campfest, probably because it's the test server and now we are just moving forward. Managed to penetrate a premium round into the Super Pershing, And that was pretty much it for this game. We didn't really do much in a tier 8 game with this gun. We just got shot up by a T-69 with heat ammunition. Such is the test server. You cannot do much about it. So, after all that gameplay, all that statistics, my honest opinion about this vehicle is, in its current format, may well change and make what I'm about to say completely irrelevant, but the guns it gets are okay. The premium ammunition on the top 10cm gun, there you go, on this gun here, and as mounted, is kind of underwhelming. 190 pound is quite good against tier 7s and most tier 8s. However, if you're going to try and fight an E75 with 215 penetration, you're going to struggle. Much like how an IS-6 struggles with its APCR, because that only has 217 penetration, something along those lines. Anyway, I had a lot more fun, on the test server at least, using the howitzer, and I mean, it's not going to win any prizes for the best penetration or accuracy or aim time, but if you find a Borsig or anything which is lightly armoured, you're going to do a hell of a lot of damage to it. So that's the guns. The armour can be quite nice at tier 7 and 8, tier 9s will go straight through you, heat ammunition will go straight through you, anything with a high penetration gun will go straight through you. Your side armour is irrelevant, it is so flat and thin. The rear armour is thick and possibly can be angled, but again it's quite flat. Turret armour is quite nice, and the fact that the gun is so high up, you can use ridges in a different way to most other vehicles. The vehicle therefore is quite nice, I quite like it, and I will be picking one of these up when it hits the live servers. And I will enjoy playing the other ones as well. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to consider giving it a like down below, and if you're new here and want to subscribe, that would be fantastic too. And as always, I've been Geogen, this has been World of Tanks, and I'll see you chaps and chapettes in the next one.